Story 1, this is Fireteam Delta. Dad's coming home. Welcome to the Military Veteran Dad Podcast, where it is our mission to bring every dad home. I am your host, Ben Killoy. I'm a United States Marine veteran, husband, and a father. We will bring authentic conversations to inspire action in your life so we can close the gap between the dad you are today and the dad you want to be tomorrow. This is the Military Veteran Dad Podcast.
Welcome to episode 31 with Ashely Bugge. This story is really powerful. Just sitting in the emotion of what she went through, sitting in the emotion of knowing that her kids don't get to hug their dad anymore, that her youngest will never know who their dad is. It was a very powerful episode for me. Brought me to tears when I was recording it. And I know it's going to bring a few dads home and just recognize the true awesomeness that it is to get to hug your kids every night. And I often talk in podcasts that if you have lost a friend in the military, live your life as the dad worthy of their sacrifice. Because if they were a dad, they don't get to hug their kids or their dad anymore. So always reflect and be the dad that is worthy of the sacrifice of your friend not coming home. And the worthy of the sacrifice of them never being able to say, I love you, Dad. And like I said, it's a really powerful episode. I'm not going to dive too much into it because I just want to get right into it here. All of her links are in the show notes in the bottom. Links to her website, her Instagram, if you want to subscribe to her blog. I was checking it out after the interview, and she really did a lot of great blog posts on there about her travels through Europe. And also the link to the Facebook group for military veteran dads where we're doing life together is also down there, so don't forget to check that out. And if you want to give any feedback on this episode or any feedback on previous episodes, go ahead, drop me a DM on Instagram at Ben_Killoy, or I'm on Facebook or on Twitter at Ben Killoy. I'd love to hear what you think of the podcast, where you think I could take the podcast, what ideas could improve the podcast, and just overall what you think of it. So without further ado, let's get started with Ashely Bugge. Today on the show, we have Ashely Bugge. Ashely's motto is just enjoy, as she follows her late husband's advice of living life with no bucket list. If you want something, go for it and make it happen now. In 2017, her husband, Brian, sailed their 36-foot sailboat, Stay Gold, to Hawaii as a fun and challenging way to move on military orders. He passed away in the same waters less than 1 year later during a scuba diving training class while Ashely was pregnant with their third child. She is currently writing a book on her experiences navigating widowhood while raising 3 young children. Shortly after her husband's passing, Ashely was inspired to share her journey on a blog, turning tragedy into triumph, which has encouraged and motivated readers from around the world who has been following her family's story of adventure, love, and tragedy since Brian sailed Stay Gold across the Pacific. Recently, in honor of her husband, Ashely started the Stay Gold for Brian Bugge Scholarship Fund, which supports and encourages military veterans to utilize scuba diving as a form of rehabilitation. Scuba diving was one of Brian's greatest passions, and she wants others to have the same opportunity to find themselves underwater. Ashely hopes that by sharing her experience, others are able to come out of a tragedy with hope and feel inspired to turn their pain into a legacy like she is doing with Stay Gold for Brian Bugge Scholarship. Ashely, thank you for coming on to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Go ahead and describe what your family looks like right now and any gaps to that intro you want to fill in for us.
Yeah, so my immediate family, I guess, my 3 kids, my now 11-month-old, her name's Adeline, my 3-year-old, about to be 4-year-old next week, 4-year-old going on, oh my gosh, I've got too many kids, when you don't even know how old they are, I've got too many. 11-month-old is Adeline, 4-year-old going on 5-year-old is Isabel, and then a 3-year-old Hudson. And that's the crew.
And it's all girls, correct?
Hudson's a boy. So the 3-year-old, he just turned 3. He's a boy. And then we call her Izzy. She's my almost 5-year-old, going on 15-year-old. Her and Adeline are the girls.
It's just like my kids. My oldest is a girl, and my son Dylan's in the middle with another crazy girl as the youngest one.
Yeah.
All fire.
They're a handful, that's for sure. Yeah.
So your story, when I first read about it, really hit me. And you're the first Gold Star family member we've had on the podcast today. And when there's the first question I think we can dive into is, when you think of what other Gold Star families go through, I know your husband didn't die in like combat or it was more on a leisure activity. Mm-hmm. But that activity, as we were talking before we got started here, kind of left a hole in your heart. What did that hole feel like a little bit? And talk about how you wanted to move through that dark side of that place you were in.
Yeah. So Brian and I, our entire relationship, I guess you would say, was based on adventure and fun. And like you said in your opening statement, you know, this notion of no bucket list. If there's something that you want to do, now is the time to do it. Take advantage of every opportunity that you're given. You know, you never know. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. You never know what's going to happen. So, you know, throw away your bucket list and just live your life and take advantage of those opportunities. And so Brian and I did that, and we really made a point to put that in the forefront for ourselves and of our relationship. And so things like sailing our sailboat across the Pacific Ocean on a PCS move, scuba diving in places around the world, traveling the world with very young children in tow. You know, we've received a lot of, I'll call them looks, but comments, things like, I would never do that. Like, why would you do that? That's crazy. Things like that maybe it wouldn't cross somebody else's mind to do, but they're things that we wanted to do and are important to us. And all that to say, scuba diving on a rebreather was a challenge that Brian wanted to learn. He wanted to participate in it and figure it out and have it be his next great adventure. And a rebreather is basically a really complex piece of diving equipment. It's a lot different than the open circuit recreational things that we see, you know, when you see pictures of scuba diving. And so he was in a training class. It was recreational. It wasn't part of the Navy, but he was in a training class and unfortunately passed away while he was in the class. So to answer your question, what that looks like or felt like, you know, he'd been in the military for nearly 15 years at that point, 14 years. And we'd gone through numerous deployments together, and he worked on submarines. So he'd be gone 6 months at a time, and I'd have literally no idea where in the world he was or when I'd hear from him, when I'd see him, if he was in danger. You know, every phone call you get, that's a number that you don't recognize. You worry that that's going to be the call. Every knock on the door, you know, when your husband's deployed or your spouse is deployed, you think you're going to open the door and there's going to be the white suit. It's a very real, a real worry for military spouses. I think around the world, they go through that. So never in a million years did I think that while we were on our first shore duty tour in Hawaii, would I get that phone call or answer the door and they're the white suit. Never did I imagine that. But unfortunately, that's what happened. So what it felt like was just indescribable, honestly. I mean, to say I was heartbroken, to say I was sad or devastated just doesn't describe it. And they don't. You can picture a movie scene. If you can picture the saddest movie scene you've ever witnessed of a pregnant woman running across an ER parking lot to find her husband has died, and then holding his hand and kissing his blue lips, you know, that was my reality. And over the next month that I was in Hawaii, trying to figure out where I was going to go and what I was going to do, trying to explain to my 1 and 3 year old kids that their dad's not coming home, trying to explain what death is to them, trying to explain why so many people are sad, why I'm sad, trying to figure out how to do all of that, and recognize that I'm not alone in that. You know, there are Gold Star families around the world that suffer these same tragedies. And honestly, like talking to other people who had been through, obviously not something in the sense of you get it, like you have been in that deep, dark place before, you understand how sad, I'll call it sad, how sad I was and how sad I am and how sad you were. And you just feel like those are the only other people that understand how you feel, are those that have lived through it and gotten to the other side.
Was it instinctful for you to reach out to the milspouse community, or was there initial almost like shame that you went through?
I didn't reach out. I started writing maybe a week or two into it. After he had passed away, I just started writing. I was the only thing that I could think of to do to get these thoughts out of my head and out of my heart and out of my system, as I needed to write them down. I needed to write down the memories that we had. I needed to write down every story I could think of, because at that time I was thinking, I'm going to forget these memories. These memories are going to fade. They're going to change. They're going to distort over time. And my kids will never know their dad. They were 3, 1, and then my baby I was pregnant with. Obviously, I won't even have a picture of the two of them. But my kids will never know their dad. And so it was really important for me to start writing and to just capture every memory I could think of, so that at some point they could look back and read these stories and get an idea of who their dad was. And so anyways, I started writing, and then I started publishing them online for other people to read, because there were people grieving around the United States, actually around the world. The diving community is very small. The sailing community is very small. And the military community, especially the submariner community, is very small. And there were people mourning him around the world. And so I'll call it a gift, I guess. My idea was to just start writing down stories to share with people. And as I did, people were responding and were reaching out to me. And so that's where I received messages from a couple other Gold Star spouses who had lived through their own tragedy with their spouse passing away. I just felt compelled to reach out and talk about their own experiences and offer their support and their help, with things that they had used, resources they had to help get through it. And it was phenomenal. I mean, I can't speak high enough about the Navy itself and what they have done for me and my family over this past year. Just the community of families that have supported us, but specifically the Navy itself they've gone above and beyond in every sense of the word.
What they don't teach you in life, and what you learned there, was that, especially in 2019, where it's not as societal norm to openly talk about what you're feeling and what's really holding on your heart, that the world is waiting for others to go first to tell their story. And when someone like you tells your story that's so powerful, you lessen the load that you're carrying around by your writing, but then you ultimately knock down a wall that someone else had and allows them to share the load that they're carrying on their heart. And with dads, we'll often talk about the podcast that in the military, they tell you if you can't lift something, you just don't have enough members trying, that you just need more people. And I've equated that to life, that you're not meant to carry everything that life gives you, that you're meant to share the load. And that's ultimately what military dads and veteran dads struggle with when we transition out, is that we don't find that community to share the load with what we're carrying on our heart. We think we have to do it alone. And that lone wolf never survives. That the lone wolf in the pack is the one that dies. And you need that community to share that load. And that's essentially what you created by holding that, by your writing and just sharing and going first there. Before he passed, there's a question that we always ask on the podcast for dads. What does it mean for you to come home? What did coming home for you as a family look like before he passed? Either from a deployment or a daily basis, however those words resonate with you.
Yeah, we were a military family. And so as every military family can attest to, home is where the heart is, really. There's no hometown. There's no Home, I guess. You'd asked like where home is for me now, and I told you in the Pacific Northwest. That's not where my family is. That's not, um, like a traditional sense of home. But home for me, and home for Brian, and home for our kids, were wherever we were all together. Coming home, Brian traveled a lot for work. He was usually gone 2 weeks of every month, and then deployments for 6 months at a time. So we spent a lot of time apart, but we made the best of it. Anytime he had to travel for work, and it was either to a place that was okay for us to travel to with him, or a place that he could take some time off on the back end, we would travel with him. So our kids had traveled to 5 countries, before the age of 3, because he had to work in Japan, for instance. And we said, you're going to be gone for 3 weeks. That's 3 weeks we could potentially be all together. So we booked tickets. Thankfully, I had a job that I could travel with. And we went to Japan for 3 weeks and spent, our home then was Japan because we were all together. He was attached to a submarine for a while based out of Hawaii before we moved there. And so my daughter and I, we would fly over at least once a month to go see him and spend a weekend there. Mm-hmm. For us, it was worth the sense of being all together for the cost of a plane ticket, because home, again, was just wherever we all were together. It didn't really matter where in the world that was. It was us making memories and having incredible experiences and taking advantage of the opportunities. We weren't a family to sit around and say, I wish things were different, or I wish our situation was different. We were the ones to say, okay, these are our circumstances. Let's figure out how to make the most of it. And we really were able to do that as a family.
One thing that military dads mess up most, that we've talked about a lot in the podcast, is when we come home from a deployment, or really any time away that's longer than a week, we transition into the household incorrectly to almost try to take control back over.
Yeah.
You have unique insight being on the other side. What are some of the things that you enjoyed the most as a military spouse that your husband did when he came home that other dads should incorporate into their life?
Yeah, there's definitely that adjustment period. I actually write about that in my book.
Because you learn to do life alone, and we don't often respect that you don't need us anymore when we come home, and that's not always easy for us to accept.
No, that's not true that we don't need you. We absolutely need you. But there's definitely just the need to become self-sufficient while you're gone, and to figure things out and to make things happen. Just because you're gone doesn't mean the world stops at home. The best things were always just the time together, the laughs, the sitting down on the couch and just having each other be there. The ability to now, try to plan for the future, trips or things to look forward to, nights out. The best advice I could offer to dads coming home is just be patient. Be patient. It's hard on everybody. It's an adjustment period for everybody. Your spouse has been doing everything in their power to keep things going as they were before you left, and doing as best they could. And now you're home, and you both had a hard time out there. You didn't want to leave. They didn't want you to leave. That's not a good situation for anybody. But again, it is the circumstances. So you just have to figure out a way to get through them and make the best of them. So just patience and communication, talking through it when you're upset about something. No one's a mind reader. Talk it out, figure it out, and don't go to bed angry.
I like that. We've often talked that coming home, we need to approach with a sense of curiosity, that you probably did do stuff while you were gone that was horrible, and you probably need to talk to someone, but that generally isn't your spouse who you need to talk to. And approaching your household just with a curiosity of what life was like just asking questions, exploring, hearing stories of trial that you went through, the hard day, figuring out what your kids went through. Did they have a bad day at school? And that's kind of what you're talking about there, is just being present, figuring out what it was like, be patient. You both had struggles, and to come home, you really need to meet your family where they are, not try to bring them where you are. Just because you're ready to light the fire and get back going with the family, everyone else needs to retransition back to that. So you really need to go all the way to wherever your family is mentally, emotionally, figure out what that is, and then go forward together with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would even say just all together. It's not completely one-sided of you're coming home, so now you necessarily have to meet them right where they are. Now it's okay. But just figuring out the new normal altogether. Like I said, when Brian would come home from deployment, we had lived life for the past 6 months, and there was a lot that he missed out on. For instance, he came home from a deployment once, and my daughter had turned 1. Izzy had turned 1 and had started walking. And Brian had said, within the first week, he's like, "You sleeping? I know you've been working hard this past 6 months. I've been gone. I'll get up with Izzy and, get a massage this morning, whatever." And I came downstairs. I slept in. It's amazing. Thank you. I slept in, came downstairs, and Brian was in a panic because he didn't realize that Izzy could now grab things and pull things down. And she had grabbed a cup of hot coffee off of the table and pulled it down on herself. And he was so freaked out. She was okay, but he was so freaked out. And it's like, I'm not going to get mad at him. It's not his fault that he wasn't here to realize that she could now do that. Mm-hmm. But we had to come together and say, okay, you missed a few things while you were gone. Yeah. You're upset that you missed, this happening. You missed her first steps. You missed her first words. I'm sad that you missed that, but it happened. And let's figure out this and move forward together from this new spot. So I never thought that it was on him to meet us where we were. And he never expected me to meet him where he was. It was, this is our new normal. Let's talk it out. Let's figure it out and go forward from this joint place together.
On every episode, we talk about and remind dads, because dads, we often try to make it more complicated than it has to be a father. And we call them time bombs and remind dads it's kids spell love TIME. And that's the most simplest thing that you need to remember if you really want to just connect with your child, that all they really want is your time. And that's how they measure that whether you love them. What are some of the simplest ways that your kids, what are the simplest things that your kids love doing with you, that you're often amazed at what they really truly enjoy doing with you?
My gosh, literally anything. You're absolutely right. I am one person now, and I am their sole provider, and they want my attention 24/7. So, I mean, literally anything, as simple as, okay, Hudson, it's your turn to go get the mail with me today. It's a 4-step walk to the mailbox, but it's one-on-one time with one child, and it means absolutely everything to them. We're overseas right now, and took an Uber ride, and I took turns with the kids in the back of the car. And even that was like, mom is sitting next to me, my turn to sit next to mom. Just, they want that one-on-one attention with literally anything, just knowing that they are they have your attention, your undivided attention. So yeah, it's stuff that you don't think of, but absolutely.
And that's the stuff they remember years later, that you're like, really? That's what you picked out of that memory? Like you'll get back to the States and you'll ask them, like, what's your favorite memory of Europe? And it'll be like, what? Because we would just got to Florida, and I asked my daughter this question, who's 3, and she said the marshmallow cereal we had for breakfast. Because that's what they had every morning for breakfast. They usually don't get it every morning for breakfast, and they love the marshmallows out of there. And my son, all they wanted was a pool. That's what they loved about Florida the most, that we had a pool at our condo. And it's not the ocean view. It's not all the grandiose things that you think that are going to happen. We liked jumping in with you, Daddy, in the pool. Like, that was all they wanted.
Yeah, absolutely. I tried really hard before Brian passed away. We only had 2 kids at that point, but we made a concerted effort to do boys' dates and girls' dates. So every Saturday morning we woke up, and Brian would take Hudson and they'd go on a boys' date, and I would take Izzy and we'd go on a girls' date. And I still do that now with each of them. I take Hudson, he says, Mom, we're going to boys date, boys only. And it's me and him. It's the cutest thing. And then, Izzy and Adeline. And we take turns going on little one-on-one dates. And they don't care where we're going, if we go to the grocery store or Target or Starbucks or whatever. It's just, they want the boys date and the girls date with Mom.
So one thing that we talk about on the podcast is that somehow the voice inside our heads as dads and active and as veterans convinces ourselves that our family is better without us. And that one of the reasons why I started this podcast was the 22 veterans a day that kill themselves every day. And I really wanted to focus on the dad in that number, that to wake dads up to recognize that their family is not better without them. What would you tell a dad out there who's thinking those thoughts, that their family would be better without them? Do you have any message you want to share with them to wake up?
Yeah, I mean, as somebody who is now a solo parent to children that have no dad, I can tell you that's absolutely not the case. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you view yourself or what you're going through. It's how your kids view you. And there's just no way. There's no way that your kids would be better off without you in their life in some capacity, or at least having a dad, even if it's not in you right now. It's not that way forever. I personally didn't have a relationship with my dad, I can say, for about 10 years. And I really thought that I would never speak to him or see him again. And 10 years later, Brian and I got pregnant with Izzy, and all of a sudden it was like, all right, who cares? It doesn't matter anymore. Whatever the past is the past. Let's figure this out and let's move forward. And I can say that the opportunity is always going to be there to build relationships with your kids. They're always going to be your children. You are the only dad that they have. I would give literally anything in the world for my kids to have their dad back. And unfortunately, I can't. But you have the opportunity to not have your kids go through that. And like I said, even if you can't handle being a dad right now, at some point you will be able to. And your kids need that for sure.
So it's been almost a year. How often do you still have to talk your kids through that dad's not coming home?
All the time. In fact, yesterday we were souvenir shopping in Warsaw, and Izzy, my 4-year-old, said, I want to get a magnet for Dada. And I said, what? And she said, well, just because I love him so much, I want to get this heart magnet because I think he would like it the most. And I had to stop. I said, okay, absolutely. I think he would have loved that heart magnet. I'm not going to tell her no, but I have to stop and kind of think through, like, we've had this conversation 100 times now. She understands he's not coming back. So is this a gesture of love because she loves him and misses him, or is this some now more confusion about the finality of death and passing away? And then Hudson, he just turned 3, and he doesn't understand the concept of death yet. He was only 1 when Brian passed away, and so he's kind of losing the memories of Dad. And he certainly doesn't understand, like, that he had one and now he's passed away. He's going to be growing up more in the I just don't really have a dad thing. But for a long time, it was my dad had passed away. But then, a few days later, he would say, can we FaceTime Dada in the ocean? Or when we go to Hawaii, can he meet us at the Brown house? So there was a lot of back and forth of, she knew the words, he passed away, but mixed with, but can we go see him? Mm-hmm. And so we still talk about it all the time, and we talk about how much we miss him, and we do things to celebrate. Like, we celebrated his birthday with cheesecake on the airplane over here. We celebrated Father's Day by going out on the water. We celebrate everything for him. We put a stocking up for him at Christmas. I don't want them to lose the memories of him and know that he's, regardless of the circumstances, going to be a part of our family forever. But I really want them to understand. I don't want there to be any question that he's coming back or not coming back. Like, I need them to understand this is a final thing, but that doesn't mean that we can't still love him.
And that I've heard stories of kids who did lose their dad to suicide, and one of them was 10 years old when dad killed himself, and he was 36, and he's like, I'm 36 and I'm still dealing with it, and it leaves a scar on their heart that never can recover. And in this case, there's a scar, a different kind of scar, but it's not maybe a scar, it's more of just a hole of a gap that they don't know how to put words to, that's just not there, that there's not the symbiotic parenting relationship of both fatherly and motherly love to fulfill. And now you're trying to fulfill both, and your son, who's looking for some type of hero in his life, doesn't have one anymore. And you've got to try to find that hero in you to show up for him in the way his dad would, but then also the nurturing mother that he needs when he needs that nurturing mother for him.
Yeah. And just the questions, I mean, that I won't be able to answer, you know, Brian's dad passed away 1 month before Brian did. His dad got pancreatic cancer and passed away 6 weeks later. And then Brian died 1 month after that. Those were the last Bugge sons, the last Bugge boys. And so family questions of, you know, my family lineage. Hudson's going to have questions about his dad and his grandpa, and they're both gone. And I don't know the answers to those. And Brian's mom and sister might, or they might not. And so even things like that, the kids will struggle with, not knowing part of their own family history. And, you know, Brian didn't die by suicide, but the kids still lost their dad, and there's no opportunity for him to come back. And, there's just, I don't know, I get emotional because it just sucks for the kids. That's their story. My dad died when I was a kid, and I'll never get to know him.
And they'll never get to change. They'll never, like, a lot of times even as adults, and I'm 34, so there's certain things in your childhood that are stories that you tell yourself about high school that are just, you program as your narrative, but those are things that hold in your back. But you can't change the narrative that your dad died. That is literally part of something in your life. And as it holds you back, maybe you can't change it. And it's an entirely different thing that you have to figure out how to move past and move into a life that you can love versus one that you regret that your dad was there while you grew up.
Yeah.
There's something we talk about in the podcast, and it's been really one of my big takeaways from interviewing Dad so far, is that we get hung up on our legacy of our service that we spend, especially even while we're serving or active, that we focus on that when we're active, our service is a noble sacrifice. So we put a lot of energy in that. And then when we transition out, maybe we lost a friend, or maybe we didn't lose a friend like I did, but you spend a lot of time trying to figure out what it meant, and then what just pondering what it meant in general and what that legacy of your service meant. And ultimately, I think what prevents dads from coming home is we don't transition from a legacy of our service to a legacy of our family. You have the opportunity now, with him being gone, to take it upon yourself to craft the own Bugge legacy. Have you given any thought to how you want the legacy of your family to be carried forward through your kids? Because I remind dads that the best chance we have to make an impact in this world is with our kids, and how we shape our legacy and what they do can be generational if we structure it correctly.
Yeah, absolutely. I think about that all the time, and I hope my actions are speaking louder than my words in that regard, because Brian definitely left a huge legacy behind of adventure and opportunity and this no bucket list mentality. And I am doing everything in my power to live my life that way, and to promote that lifestyle with my kids and our friends and our family and anyone else who will listen, all of you listeners. I am trying to really push that concept out there. Yeah, absolutely. And then, you know, I started this stay goal for Brian Bugge Scholarship Foundation, because there's absolutely a fine line between your passion and your drive and your career, your motivation for having this incredible career, and service to our country. I know it's more than just a career, but there has to be some balance with your family and your personal life as well, not just your family, but yourself. And Brian was somehow able to grasp that concept, and he really gave each of us and his family and his service and himself the opportunity to thrive. And that's really been my motivation in putting the Scholarship Foundation together, is really giving other military veterans the opportunity to find a passion for themselves outside of their service, and find it for themselves. You're not going to fulfill your family or your country or your service if you're not happy and thriving as an individual. And so Brian found that passion in sailing and in scuba diving. And so I started the Scholarship Foundation for military veterans who want to learn to scuba dive as an outlet, or a form of rehabilitation, or just something to give yourself outside of your military service. You guys work harder than anybody on the planet. You work longer hours. You sacrifice so much of yourself and your time to really give us all this incredible opportunity and freedom. And you need to take care of yourselves too. And if you can find something that you love doing, that brings you hope and brings you fulfillment, you need to take advantage of that, and you need to do it. And yeah, that's why I started the Scholarship Foundation. Absolutely. Let Brian's legacy live on.
Oftentimes when dads get focused on their service, we treat it almost like a credit card that we can just keep borrowing from our family's time, and we'll just catch up at some point. And eventually the credit card debt gets so high that, and the emotional credit card debt in this case, that the marriage isn't sound, the relationship with the kids isn't sound, and then eventually it ends most likely in the divorce. And you hit it on the head there, that you need to find that balance with family, because there is only so much you can borrow. And I like what you guys did, where you knew that you were going to make a withdrawal from the emotional bank account when he would go away, and you would get creative and try to find out ways to be together and to not have that withdrawal be so significant.
Yeah, absolutely. Where there's a will, there's a way. And if you want to make it work, you might not be able to just fly as a family over to where your spouse is, but you can certainly FaceTime or Skype or write old-fashioned letters, or something Brian did on one of his first deployments was record himself reading books to the kids, so that I could play them these videos of him reading a book to them, and then he mailed the book home so they would have it. So just even little things like that make you feel still involved and still a part of it, and have your kids and your family feel like you're there with them, even though you physically can't be there. Those little things just mean everything. They make the absolute difference in that time away, which is unavoidable, unfortunately.
And when you were talking and describing your legacy there, it really hit me what your husband did without really knowing it. Is he knew in his heart and was really connected to who he was as a person and his philosophy, and really lived his life by that motto. He essentially gave you and your kids a playbook for what that really, like, I was tearing up as I was thinking about this thought, that the best way that your kids are going to be able to connect with their father, that in many ways they won't truly have long lasting memories other than a picture maybe that connects them to a moment, they'll be able to resonate with who he is by living life in the way he did.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Without question. That is the number one thing that I want these kids to know about their dad, is that he wasn't a superhero, but he was an incredible man who really just lived his life in a really, really cool way, and that it's possible. And you don't have to live in fear. You don't have to live in a world of I can't, or maybe someday. No, you need to live for what you want and what's important to you. And yeah, without question, he ingrained that in me, and that's how we lived our lives and our relationship. And that's how we were raising our kids right up until he passed away. And that's how I'm trying to take over the torch and raise them by myself now.
And there was Navy SEAL Andy Stump came on the podcast, and he gives the advice that gives your kids the widest view of the American dream as possible as you're raising them. And oftentimes American society says that you just need to send them to school for 12 years and that makes them a good adult and they'll know what they want to do at the end. They can go to college. But that American dream is you go to college, you get a job that you think you want, but you don't really know. And you get a degree for something that they told you needed to have. You start a family, you get a car, you get debt, you get student loans. And then you're 30 years old and you realize you've got 2 kids, a mortgage and a house, and you got a job that you hate. And now you feel like you're stuck. So I really took it upon myself to make sure that, and I was even thinking as we were in Florida last week that I was like, what will this experience of them living in a week in a condo on the beach, which most people have never even seen the ocean in the United States sometimes, and living their entire life. Like, what will this memory at such a young age, how will that seed grow in their mind of what is possible for their life and what they want to do when they grow up? And even for you, as you're traveling through Europe this summer, like you're planting seeds in a garden that you never get to see grow, which was one of the best ways I've heard Legacy explain that you're giving them experiences that you have no idea how that one random person maybe on your travel inspired an entire new thread to be weaved into their life.
Yeah, without question, experience, to me, the gift of experience is the best education that I can offer my kids. Education is very important to me. You know, they're going to go to school. They're going to be educated people, well-rounded people, but I don't think that looks the same for everybody. And to me, it's more important to, well, for instance, we're in Poland right now, and we went to Auschwitz 2 days ago. And as I was telling people about our trip and the things that we were going to be visiting and explaining why we chose the places that we're going to go to, you know, I was met with a lot of resistance of, you can't bring kids there. Why would you bring young kids there? They're too young to hear that stuff. And maybe for a lot of people that's true, but I am so open and honest with my kids, and I don't really shelter them or hide stuff from them in that regard. I want them to understand things, and I want them to have a good education and to not be hidden away from real life. I want them to understand that this is what happened, this is why it happened, this is how we prevent it from happening again. And I just think that letting them experience that, and, you know, I use kid gloves when I explain stuff. I don't use, you know, concepts that they're not going to understand, but I use things like, you know, how Dada passed away last year. Well, these people's family passed away too, and this is why, and this is what's going on. And so just exposing them to real life experience and situation is the best gift and education that I can give them, but giving them something to tangibly correlate these ideas and these concepts to, you know, instead of sitting in their 5th grade classroom seeing a picture of the pyramids, I want them to see the pyramids in real life in Egypt and know what it tastes like and smells like and feels like, what the people look like, you know, how hot it is there, to give them this real world example of what that means and what that looks like. I think that that's the best thing that I can do for them.
And you're doing something that I think also dads have a role to play in their kids' life, is you're giving the words to what they're experiencing from you. You are the first person to explain something to them. It's not someone else in the playground explaining what sex is. Or what evil is. Or it's not, a bully isn't their first exposure to what evil is or what pain feels like, that they've been exposed to that in a way that you articulated it in a way that now they're going to be that 5th grade when they learn about World War II and the concentration camps, that they're going to raise their hand and be like, I was there. Like that's not something you can take lightly for a kid to be able to say that when they read about something and now connect a memory of being there and now putting additional words to it when they're capable of understanding it, that is what is a huge role of what fathers and parents play in their kids' lives is, and we often shepherd away from it, that we need to be the first voice in our kids' lives and make sure that they understand and almost demystify a lot of things. Because we were traveling through the airport for the first time to Florida, and my daughter was like, why is there airport security? Why do we have to empty everything out? Why do we have to have everything scanned? And I didn't really go into the idea that people are trying to hurt planes or that planes crash, or I don't think she really realized the gravity of that when we were up in the air at 30,000 feet, that planes don't always make it back down. But like, these are things as they experience life, they're wondering. And it's up to us to help be the first voice to understand what that is, because someone else will do it. And it's never going to be the narrative you want. And they're going to come home asking questions that you weren't ready to answer. And it's already too late at that point.
Absolutely. Even something is, we were standing outside of the town plaza last night waiting for our car ride home. And there was a little boy in a wheelchair next to us. And Izzy pointed and said, Mama, why is he in a wheelchair? And I thought about it. It'd be much easier to just say, oh, honey, don't say that, or don't point, brush it off and quickly move aside. It takes time to explain. Not everybody looks the same. Like, everyone has something, some people's scars are inside, some are outside. Everyone's gone through different life experiences. Sometimes that means you end up in a wheelchair. Some people are born with disabilities that land you in a wheelchair. To me, taking the time to explain that to a 4-year-old, even though they might not get the entire gist of what you're saying, is much more important than, you're right, them going to school and hearing, snide remarks about somebody in a wheelchair or bullying about somebody in a wheelchair, and them thinking that that's okay. Instead, I would rather have her know the real reason that people are in wheelchairs or that have disabilities, and being that voice to her and giving her the reality of that, instead of hearing uneducated remarks elsewhere.
There's a speech that I heard that, and I used this to teach my daughter kindness, and she understood what kindness was, but I don't think they understood exactly how to take action on it. And it's be the rainbow to someone's storm. That, like, teaching my daughter that rainbows only come after a storm. And when you see someone in a storm, be that rainbow. And the reason why you can't find the pot of gold is because someone else is the rainbow for you. You can't find your own pot of gold. And she's always understood that. And when I first started teaching her that, we would talk about every night of like what rainbow she gave away. And one day she gave away a double. And it's those simple moments that you cement that, what you talked about there with the kid, that everybody has something and everybody needs a friend. And we went to play at the playground where she's at school, and they have a bench, and it's called the buddy bench. So kids sit on it if they need a buddy. And I was helping her. I was asking her if she ever helps a friend that's in the buddy bench, and she's like, no. And then sometimes she's sitting in the buddy bench, and I was trying to explain to her that these are opportunities to make new friends, and everybody deserves a friend. And she's only 7, so it's still very early on, but these are basic threads in the overall fabric of how she'll interact, and either be afraid to interact with people that need a friend or push away. And I can say from my childhood, I wasn't that guy that would always reach out, and I was the shy one that just kept to himself and was afraid to make a friend. So trying to thread that into her life now is important. And I have to ask, and you went to Amsterdam, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Amsterdam being the stereotypical place that people think about, was there any awkward moments that you had to explain, or was it pretty normal European stuff?
No, not that I had to explain. I mean, the smells, I guess Izzy was like, ew, what's that smell? And I said it was a special cigarette. Everyone walks around smoking weed and you can smell it everywhere, but I wasn't about to. She wouldn't grasp that concept of drugs at 4 years old. I just said it was a special cigarette.
And she can't read
understood
yet. That would have
because,
been worse.
you
Probably
know,
my 7-year-old can read, so it's horrible when they can read, because literally everything around them they can start dissecting. And I can imagine
yeah,
billboards in Amsterdam would have been like, "Why is that billboards that, Mama?"
yeah. So she can actually read now. She
Oh,
learned this past school year. I don't think we saw any billboards. I don't think we actually saw anything super inappropriate. I think the funniest thing we had to explain was what's that
the smell.
smell? Yeah. Yeah, Amsterdam was an interesting place. That was the first stop on our tour. So it was a fun one.
If there's a parting piece of advice you want to leave for dads, or a message, what would it be?
Um, hmm. I would say, I mean, the most important message that I have for everybody across the board is to find your passion and to live your passion. Um, Especially, I know you speak a lot to military service members or past veterans. Um, so don't count yourself out in all of this. Give your family credit for what they're doing, but give yourself some credit in there too, and be able to talk, or try to talk. If it's not to your spouse, find a friend, find somebody you can talk to. I can tell you from my personal experience that finding people who had gone through something similar to what I had is the only thing that helped get me through, one of the only things that helped get me through losing my spouse. And it's not comfortable to reach out. I get that. It's awkward, and it's just uncomfortable to say, this is me, I'm putting myself out there. But I can tell you, it's worth it. It's worth it to find somebody that you connect with that just gets it and gets you, and that you can talk to about whatever. And then also to find something that brings you joy and brings you happiness outside of your family and outside of your military service and outside of your work if you're working now. Find something that you can call yours, that you look forward to, that makes you happy, that brings you joy, and maybe share it with your family, maybe share it with your spouse, or maybe don't let that be your thing. But I think having something that's yours that keeps you happy, keeps you motivated, and keeps you excited about life and tomorrow and what's going on is so important. And that's the best advice that I can give.
I don't think we dove into it too much. What would you classify your passion as you redefined yourself on the other side of losing your husband?
I mean, definitely travel. Travel has always been my biggest passion. Seeing the world, seeing things that I know not a lot of other people get to see or experience. I was telling you earlier, when I was in a very deep, dark place after losing Brian, I needed something to pull me out of this, something to look forward to, and something to motivate me to get past this just deep, dark sadness. And for me, it was travel. What was the most extravagant, crazy thing that I could think of doing to look forward to after losing him. And it turned into a 2-month trip across Europe with 3 very young children. And that's, I'm calling in here from Warsaw, Poland. We head to Switzerland in a couple of days, and then on from there. So we're doing 7 countries in 2 months with the 3 young kids. And I've got 2 of my really good friends with me on this trip. So definitely travel. It's always been there for me. I'm never going to regret spending the money on experience and education and making memories around the world. Never regret that.
I like everything that you just said there. And when it comes to redefining yourself, what's going to be next after Europe?
Yeah, you're the second person that's asked me that, and I don't know. I don't have a good answer for it yet.
It's almost
but I feel
like a
a lot
curse
of pressure
question.
for something. It is.
Whenever you do something epic, you're like, what's next?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the process of writing my 2nd book now. So when I get back from this trip at the end of August, that's going to be my focus. Is I'm writing about my life since losing Brian. So the second part of the day he passed away and up through this trip, and the ups and mostly downs of this past year. And so I'm going to really just kind of focus on everything that I experienced here, digesting it. What did I learn from it? What did I gain from it? Who am I now that I've returned from this epic journey across Europe? And then I'll put some thought into what or where is next. But we'll see. The only continent I haven't been to is Antarctica. I don't have a bucket list, but if I did, that would probably be the only thing on it. So there's potential. Our next visit will be me calling in from Antarctica with some penguins around me.
Last question that you inspired there as you were talking about Europe. What's something about yourself that you weren't expecting to find in Europe that you did?
I think just I've found my confidence back. I really struggled after Brian passed away with a lack of confidence. How am I going to do this? How am I going to raise 3 kids by myself that are so young with a newborn in the mix? I just really struggled. I've always been an overly confident person. I've never struggled with confidence before, but it broke me. I was almost done for, and I think just being here, I've had so many naysayers of you can't bring three kids across Europe for 2 months. You just can't do it. Why would you do that? Don't do that. Members of my own family are saying, I don't understand why you would do that. And it's okay. They don't have to understand. It's not for them to understand. This is for me and my kids. And I think I have just really found my confidence here, kind of saying, what now? I'm doing it.
Yep.
Just because you're not going to do it doesn't mean I'm not going to, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it well. And my kids are still really productive members of society, really well-rounded kids. And I think that would be my biggest takeaway up to this point is there's nothing that I can't do. There's honestly nothing in this world that I don't think that I'm capable of doing.
And as Americans, we just don't do enough time exposing ourselves to, we're creatures of patterns, and that's what capitalism is, and which consumerism creates is you go to Target every week and you do your reset on the weekend, and then you go back to work, and that's your life. And I've read a statistic that only 20% of Americans have a passport, and only 10% of Americans actually use it. And it's ultimately why people can't understand why. And I absolutely would want, I'm part of the group that would love to go. My wife's a teacher, so our life is perfectly set up to go on vacation for 2 months in the summer. And just, we were in Florida. I was like, we could easily just park in Florida for the entire summer, and that be our summer vacation, and just have memories for 2 weeks or 2 months. And you'll never regret later in life when you're 50. Man, I really wish I would go to Europe that time and use that money for something else, to have a house that I don't or want, and stuff in your house that you don't need. And those memories are irreplaceable.
Without question. People say, I can't afford it. And, that's probably true for a lot of people. It's not cheap to travel, but there are ways to do it inexpensively. And if you can bring your family of 4 to Disney World for a week, give me a call, because I can get you to Europe for a week with the same budget. Hands down, I'll be a personal.
I'll take you up on that offer when I get there.
Do it, please. But it's true. Like, people are afraid of what they don't know, I think is what it comes down to. They're afraid of the unknown. One of the girls that I have traveling with us, she's a friend now, but she was the kid's nanny when we were living in Boise, Idaho. And she didn't have a passport when I called her and said, you want to go to Europe for 2 months? And she said, okay. Do I need a passport? And she had never had plans of leaving the United States before. She probably would have been perfectly content living out the rest of her life in Boise, Idaho. But now she's had this opportunity, and it's thanks to Brian, honestly. We're only doing this because of what has happened. So yeah, she's with us, and she got a passport, and she's traveling now. And she said to me a couple times, like, I never realized how easy this was. I feel like I could come back here and do this. Like, I want to bring my family here now and show them some of these things. So it's absolutely accessible. Travel in any capacity. It doesn't matter where you go. It doesn't have to be Europe for 2 months. Go to a ranch in Montana, or go see New York City, or go to the coast in Florida. And anywhere you go that's away from home is going to be special, and it's going to make memories, and you're going to learn something, like you said, about yourself from it. and about your family as well. And it's absolutely worth the time and the energy and the money to do it.
All right. You inspired one more question. I promise to be the last one. When your husband was alive, what did you guys dream about being? What was life after service planned for? Is this essentially what the game plan was always?
Yeah, he commissioned as an officer in August 2017, and that meant he had 10 years left in the Navy. And so the next 10 years we would spend alternating between shore duty and sea duty. We would do a lot of traveling, as we always had. And then we had kind of two different plans. One was to move to Ireland and let our kids do high school in Ireland and do a lot of traveling around Europe and use that kind of as a hub, just because it's one of the most beautiful places on earth. And then the other plan was to open a dive shop, and he was going to teach scuba diving, and we would run a dive shop, or he would run a dive shop, and we would just keep living life, having the same types of adventures, and just
that reminds
go
me
until
of
we couldn't go anymore.
the guy that ran the dive shop in Okinawa, where I first got scuba dive certified, and it was just a guy that loved it. He was in the military. He got out over there, started a dive shop, and
yeah,
the rest was history.
Yep, that was the dream. He wasn't great with business. We owned a couple businesses over the years, and he wasn't the best business manager, but he was good at doing. He was the doer, and I was the planner.
and the dreamer, it sounds like a little bit.
Yeah, exactly.
He was the idea man.
Yeah, he had a lot of ideas.
I absolutely loved this conversation. It got me to tears during the conversation. And if people want to follow your blog, what's the best way to connect with you?
Yeah, just going to my website, ashleybugge.com, ASHLEYBUGGE.com, or you can find me on Instagram, ashley.bugge, on Facebook, Ashely Bugge, and I'm all over the place. I'd love to connect with anybody out there in any walk of life, any capacity. I'd love to talk to you about anything. And obviously, from the past hour I've been on here, I like to talk. So please reach out.
And you seem like a very open book as well.
Absolutely. At this point in my life, I have no secrets. I put my life out there on my blog. You can read about me, about the ups and downs, about funny stories, about the crazy things, the happy, the sad. It's all out there. So there's really not much at this point that I'm not willing to talk about, or that people out there aren't willing to talk to me about. So there's a good chance if you've been through something or felt something or had a hard time or struggled with something, I might not understand the exact circumstances, but I could probably connect with you on some level about the emotion. So please feel free to reach out. Please say hi.
And you understand the process. So the process is the same for many similar emotional events, even if it wasn't a death.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, Ashely, thank you for coming on the show. I really enjoyed this, and I am positive that this brought a few dads home today.
Good. Thank you so much.
That's a wrap. And thank you for listening to today's show, and I really hope you enjoyed it. The lifeblood of any new podcast are the reviews. If you haven't reviewed the podcast yet on iTunes, I would really appreciate it, and you will help us get the message out to even more military veteran dads. As John Maxwell says, if there is hope in the future, there is power in the present. Dads, it's time to come home.